Hello and welcome to DIESOL episode number 6. We are your hosts, Brent Warner
and Ixchell Reyes.
Hi, Ixchell. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you today?
Good. So today we're going to be talking about group work, but we will get to that in a minute. We have a couple things around our lives that are going on. So Ixchell, what's going on?
Right. It's December, and that means holiday season is upon us. We are wrapping up a year, getting ready for 2020. So Brent, what's new with you?
Well, yeah, same thing, wrapping everything up. And I this year, kind of happily, I am not going on vacation anywhere. Last few years, it's been cool to go to different places and travel. And of course, I always love that. But it's this year, nothing special planned. And so we'll be floating around the Southern California area for the holidays.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I'm probably staying around too. So we've got a new review.
Awesome.
And this is from Apple Podcasts. Mo Senna writes, there are very few podcasts with a focus on teaching a second or foreign language. Thank you, Ixchell and Brent, for reducing the gap between technology, academics, and practical teaching. May your podcast last for many moons. Cheers, Mo.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Mo, for that review.
Yeah, thank you, Mo. That's very kind. We hope that the show does last for many moons as well. And so, Ixchell, in connection to that, we've got an announcement. We have new pins.
Pins. So,
well, let's quickly kind of explain these pins. These are different than the buttons that we have, right? The buttons are available to anybody who walks up and talks to us, right? Or if they see us or, whatever, we're happy to give you buttons anywhere. But these pins, these are enamel pins, and they're super awesome with the logo of us on the car and everything. Really, really unique. But we have done something kind of special here with these. So, Ixchell.
Right. So these are limited edition. In order to earn one, in order to win one, or be eligible for one, you can leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. And this is starting last month. So November, we read a review, and so that person has already scored a pin.
Yeah, that was AdRock's review from last time and Mo's review from this time. So
correct.
If you guys get hold of us, AdRock and Mo, if you get hold of us, we will send you off one of these super limited edition pins. So Ixchell, obviously in the podcasting format, we can't totally explain what this pin looks like, but
it's beautiful enamel pin.
It is beautiful. And when we say limited edition, we do really mean that. So there are 100 pins printed and created, and that is all we're going to be making. So the only way really to get this, we have dedicated a little bit of a split out of these to let everybody know. 50 are going to go out to reviewers and or people who help us kind of promote the show in cool ways. And so mostly that will probably look like the terms of Apple Podcast reviews. Although if people find other cool ways to promote the show that we end up talking about on an episode, then that will be the person who wins a pin for that episode.
I know everybody loves to have a little bit of limited swag. I'm telling you, they're going to be collector's items one day.
Yeah, super limited, but really only 100 total made, and we will not be making more. The other ones, Ixchell, you and I are both getting a few each. We're I think we're taking 10 each for ourselves to hand out, probably mostly to family, right? I mean, a couple of diehard fan supporters maybe, but really we're only getting 10 each, and then the other ones are going to be saved only for people that we invite onto the show as guests. So there's like pretty much no way that anybody's going to get one of these pins unless they're actively like trying to promote the show. That's the wrong way to say it, but maybe
shameless plug.
Yeah, no, if you don't tell everybody how awesome this show is, you're not going to get one of these.
But we really just want to make sure our show is out there. Right. And again, like we said, there's not a lot in terms of ESL and Edtech. So we want to make sure that it reaches as many audience members as we possibly can.
Yeah. So if you want to see what these pins look like, they are up at DIESOL.org, or you can probably check either of our Instagrams. They will be posted before this episode goes live, so we'll be proudly sharing them on Instagram and Twitter as well. But yeah, for sure. So super limited edition. Get in on that. Right now, there's still only a handful of reviews, and so it's totally easily possible for you to be one of the people who is reviewed in the, or whose review we bring up on the show, and then we will happily send you a pin as well. No,
so 2 are gone. The first 2 are gone.
First 2 are gone. There's only 48 left, right? And then also, again, to Mo and to AdRock, who did do those first couple reviews, please send us a message so we will make sure to get those ones sent off to you. And we might have to, Ixchell, we might have to find some sort of methodized way to make sure that the people who are contacting us are the people who actually left the review.
Right.
But I think our listeners are honest people, and we can trust what they have to say.
Yes.
All right, so let's jump into it.
So today's topic is group work. In the language classroom, we are responsible as instructors for creating a learning environment that promotes authentic interaction opportunities in order to maximize the language experience. And I think as experienced instructors, we know that situations that promote problem solving are probably some of the best ways to get our students engaged and our students participating. But what does the literature say about the value of group work?
So there's a lot of information out there about the value of group work, but I was pretty happy because someone put together all the research for me on this one and for both of us. So I found this article from Washington University in St. Louis from the Teaching Center, and it's called The Benefits of Group Work, and it goes through these ideas. It basically says, that there are a lot of different benefits for including group work in your class. And Ixchell, kind of before I go too far into this, I do a lot of group work in my class. My students know that they're always going to be kind of jumping together and talking to different people and having a lot of those things. And so part of me feels like that is default, but I also recognize that that's not always what's happening in the language classroom.
Right. I'm still surprised at how many classrooms I walk by or teachers I talk to where maybe the teacher has become frustrated in ways of figuring out how to run the classroom. And the easiest thing to do is to assign work and have students complete it individually and then just talk about something. But that's not really group work. And so this, I feel like there's so much we can say and educate others in terms of group work.
Yeah, so let's get into this just a little bit. One of the cool things about this article is that it points out essentially a meta-analysis. So they pulled together all of the information from 168 different studies, and that was from Johnson et al. We'll give you the links to all of this in the show notes. But they basically figured out that students learning in a collaborative situation had greater knowledge acquisition, retention of materials, and higher order problem solving and reasoning abilities than students working alone, which is a pretty big deal, right? I mean, basically everything we're trying to do in the classroom works better when students are working in groups. And they talked about this because basically when you're working with others, it allows you to kind of construct new knowledge and put that into a framework of existing knowledge and then refine and assess what you do and do not know as a student. And so I love this because it's not coming from the teacher as a top-down thing, but for students, they feel like they're developing and creating this understanding of how things work. And then you can truly do the whole, guide on the side thing where it's like, helping nudge them into the places where they're trying to go, but not necessarily telling, hey, this is exactly what you have to do every single time. And then it kind of goes on to say that groups can tackle more complex problems than individuals can. And when you're working in a group, this again is the whole idea of the room is smarter than the individual. And so you can gain more expertise and become more engaged when you're working together with other people who have maybe different thinking and different opinions than you.
Right, right. So that's really interesting. And I looked at an article called Why Group Work Could Be the Key to English Learner Success, um, from by Katrina Schwartz, written in 2017 over at Mindshift.
Mm-hmm.
And this article looked at a high school in San Francisco that uses a non-traditional approach to educating language learners. And they know, I mean, the instructors there know that group work fosters language interaction, especially among newcomers. And these populations may be from countries that maybe don't value collaboration, or whose educational gap may be wide because they may have been missing a few years of school. And the traditional school models usually group students by language ability. However, what the teachers do at this high school is they put groups based on language backgrounds. So
interesting.
And so I know that for us, for example, to get a group that is not homogenous, that's hard to come by sometimes, especially when all your speakers are Chinese speakers or Arabic speakers. But they careful. So this school, the population is only language learners. So they try to include at least someone who speaks a different language and all of the groupings. A lot of thought goes into it, whereas we just kind of do it spur of the moment. And one of the driving forces behind this is that you're exposing students to different ways of thinking, and you're exposing students to different ways of problem solving. In fact, the article quotes someone from Yemen, a student from Yemen who says, well, I'm used to being around people who share the same religion and share the same viewpoint. So for me to be in a group that includes other ways of thinking is really beneficial as a language learner, because you have to communicate and you have to be able to get to solve some kind of problem or get to some kind of project. And of course, group work doesn't just happen by itself. There, you got to have a strategy. And also, one of the challenges is, how do you get buy-in from students? Because I when I was younger, and I'm a language learner as well, I didn't necessarily always like being in a group, because what would happen is inevitably I would be selected as a leader, or I would self-select because I didn't trust others to do the same quality of work.
Right. So this is actually a big one. And I wanted to kind of pause on this one for a second, because really there are students who don't buy into the group work mentality, right? And so, and I know you're going to explain this, but like that idea of like, well, hold on a second. If they don't want to collaborate, if they just want to work on their own, right? What's going to end up happening here? And how do we help them recognize that, hey, yes, there's more going on here at higher level thinking and more critical thinking and development of deeper ideas when you work in groups rather than when you work alone, because a lot of the students don't feel that way, right? They're not going to get that A, and therefore the A might be more important than the process.
And so, and so I think one of the and me reflecting on this is, when you don't attach, well, number one, you should have clear roles of what's going to be happening in the group. And that's what's mentioned in the article. Expectations should be clear so that students understand their duties. There should sometimes you'll have students who are emergent speakers, or maybe they're extremely nervous when they're sharing their ideas. So you want to always give them a chance to pre-write, so that they can have something already prepared to say, or something that lowers the nervousness.
I like this idea of clear roles too, just to kind of clarify my understanding of that, because a lot of times we might just say, okay, get into groups and do stuff, right? And sort it out and talk about it together. But if you then
write it,
right, and then inevitably it's the Ixchell of the group that's going to be the person that's doing all of that work, right? But if you say, hey, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to do this, however many people it is, and then does that rotate from time to time, or how does that end up working?
Well, I think it's important to have the roles rotated. And the article mentioned that when the goals were explained clearly, and the students understood those expectations. They did everything they could to make sure that everyone in the group got an equal opportunity to read in English, to speak in English, and they recognized that it was important for them to have that chance. So I think that's the difference there, is that students understood that each role was there to help them, not just to hurry up and finish this project and get your score, but actually that this was beneficial for their language growth.
Right. So there's a lot of things going on here. Also, we should point out from the original article, one of the things that they also mentioned was that there are these massive benefits in terms of development of workplace and professional development skills. So a lot of times students say, hey, I don't want to work with other people. But, my common response to that is, do you think you're going to have a job where you're not working with other people?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's like, you had mentioned kind of in the pre-show, Ixchell, about some of the skills that you developed that maybe, being a little bit of an introvert, you might not have developed otherwise. Right.
And that's true. Again, it made it uncomfortable for me to have to be in charge of people. But, over time I realized, hey, I've been in this situation before. I know how to manage. I know how to delegate. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I love doing it, but I developed the skill that otherwise I would not have honed.
Right.
And I also wanted to mention quickly that I had spoken to you about a podcast episode on the hidden brain. On NPR, and they looked at researchers who collaborated together versus the researchers who did not do as much together, and the type of ideas that they gathered. And they found that researchers who had in their network people from other countries and people from other experience backgrounds and repertoire, they had the richest content in terms of their findings in whatever publications they had. I don't know if I explained that clearly, but
yeah, that makes sense.
It went to go.
They had a broader
right.
Experience to draw from, and therefore they were able to create more a wider variety of possible outcomes or more creative or interesting results in terms of their studies, right?
Right. And to bring this back to the article that I mentioned, one of the reasons why they focused on group work is because many of these English learners, refugees or newcomers, are at higher risk of not making it through college, not getting into college, and not having those same opportunities as those who already speak the language. So they want to close that gap. And once they know how to collaborate and speak up for themselves and sort of problem solve, then it gives them a higher chance at finishing a degree, which is, ultimately we want all of our students to be successful.
Absolutely. So I think we've got a lot of kind of literature here to kind of think about. Let's shift over and bring this into the classroom. Okay, so Ixchell, I know that one of the issues that people bring up when I talk about this, they say, okay, well, hey, if I'm going to be doing group work, then, all the students are sitting together, they're all talking to each other. In that case, then why do I need to do anything digitally, or why do I need to have any technology to do these, right?
Right.
Isn't the best thing that they're just sitting and talking to each other, and therefore wouldn't technology get in the way of this?
Right. And it sounds like a lot of people that you don't need technology. A phone or a tablet just cuts down on your interaction, and you're not working face to face. And I would say I challenge that view.
Yeah, and it's not to say, of course, that talking to each other face to face alone is bad, but you can enhance this with some of the technology and some of the things that are out there. So
sure.
So one way that I do this is with Google Slides. What I have my students do, and I might have mentioned this before, but this is kind of a favorite fallback, and I use it in lots of different situations, is that if I have a group working together and they're talking about their work, they collect their work digitally. So, hey, we all kind of came up with these ideas. And then what they do is they link that to a shared document in a Google slide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just the people from the one table sharing with each other, but they all have access to all of their classmates' work. And that way the whole conversation, and like you said, if people are giving, have different roles, and one person's role is, the secretary, and they are taking notes on everything, and another person's role is, maybe the leader, and they are the ones who is creating questions or whatever it is, all of that stuff gets recorded. And so it's not just the conversation, but it's the access and ability to go back to that conversation and return to it and revisit it. Because how many times have you talked about something once and you go, I'm going to remember this, and then you go, what was that thing we were talking about? And even more so when it's your partner or the other person at the table, you said, oh, you came up with a really good idea. I'm going to remember. If I can't even remember what I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to remember what you were thinking at that time, right? So, so using collaborative Google Slides, everybody can jump into the slides. They can share links to the work that they're talking about. They can highlight, one idea, and they can focus in on certain things. And then, like you mentioned before, they have an entire repository now of digital resources that is the collective thoughts of not only their group but all the other groups in the class, and then it's like, like you said, hey, Ixchell is the person who we know already always takes charge. Let's go see what she had to say, because she wasn't in my group this time. I want to hear her feedback, right? I want to hear her thoughts on this thing. And then it becomes student-driven desire to be more successful with the work, and they don't have to rely on the teacher to put all the information together.
And we always talk about those Google apps, but one of the reasons why we love the Google apps is because of that collaborative ingredient that it has, so the aspect of it. And I've used something called Padlet. I know that you're familiar with it.
Oh yeah.
And Padlet is a platform that allows group collaboration. It's sort of like Post-it notes, but you can add videos, you can add links, you can it's almost like a bulletin board, a digital bulletin board, but you can customize it. And I loved Padlet in the past because it used to be free, and I know that they not too long ago they changed that.
Yeah, probably about a year ago they changed that. It was
I remember
big, kerfuffle in the Edtech world at the time. Yeah.
Right. So I've used Padlet for to collect videos, and I know you talked a lot about saving items to be able to look back at, and creating maybe like a reference section of past projects or something like this. It's great for saving student examples as well. But what I've used it for is for debates. So I would have students in debate groups, and I would have like the pro side and the con side. They all shared a bulletin board, but initially, since they didn't know which side they'd be arguing, their job was just to collect all of the different arguments and have research cool. Or something. And they could see both groups were working on the same thing, so they could see all the arguments. But then came the time when I had to tell them, well, you're going to be arguing the pro side, you're going to be arguing the con side. So now they're able to go back into this bulletin board and see what's been collected, and now they could add more. But what I really liked is that I could go in there and see what students had updated. And not only that, but after the project, I have now an example of work that someone's done. So I could use it for students to look at for future debates. And you could post videos, as I said. You could have polls. I've used it for polls where you wanted students to choose something and then give a reasoning as to why. But a lot of this I like because the materials could be curated and students could go back and see it. And so a lot of the times they were critical of their spelling. They would go back and check each other's spelling. And so little things like that actually makes students more responsible because they know that someone else is looking at it. And I know you and I have talked about when students have a real audience, that's, that makes them more, that holds them accountable for the material that they're putting out there and the quality of their work.
Yeah, I love that pro-con thing, because the other part of that is that you could, if you're assigned as a con, you can still go back into there and look at what people are saying for the pros, and then use that as a way to develop your counter arguments too, right? So that whole, broad visibility thing makes things a lot more, it gives students more opportunities to get deeper into certain parts of it too.
And I wanted to mention another kind of cool thing that I did with this is I created a meme contest, and the meme contest was the pair of students had to come up with the coolest, or, we had to vote on this, the coolest catchphrase to some concept or some story that we were talking about. And they were to create their meme and post it on the bulletin board, on the Padlet, or it's called the dashboard, I think, post it up there. And then the entire class would just keep checking every 5 minutes to see if somebody else had updated. Oh, wow. And the more stuff that went up there, the more creative they got, because, and then again, at first you thought, well, nobody's going to get into this. We're going to have only about 3 submissions. No, we had several submissions, and those are things that students kept going back to because it was all easily accessible in one little page.
I love that, actually. So we're going to have to do a different episode in the future about memes, and memes for language learning, because I always shy away from it, thinking that people aren't necessarily going to understand the humor inside of it or what's going on with the joke. But I want to talk about this more in the future.
We should. We'll explore this.
Yeah, let's put this down in notes for the future. But there's one other thing that I wanted to share, which is for collaborative group work, is Quizlet Live. So Ixchell, have you seen this?
Quizlet. So I've used Quizlet before, and I've seen Quizlet Live, but I think you explained this adds a different twist. It's sort of like the Kahoot. We talked about Kahoot before, but this is a little bit different. Right. It actually solves the problem of students trying to get the fastest time.
Right. So it's pretty cool.
What is Quizlet Live?
Yeah, basically what it does is, let's just keep it simple and talk about vocabulary, right? So it would you have the vocabulary word or a definition, and then it's going to say, hey, what are all the different possible vocabulary words this could be? And normally if you're using Kahoot, then you would have your 4 words and you would just try and choose that word as quickly as possible, right? But in Quizlet Live, what this does is it groups people together. And so you say, hey, there's 4 of you together, and each of you is, you're going to have the answer spread across your possible different phones. And so it's not just everybody has the right answer somewhere on their phone. It means that the right answer is only on one person's phone out of your group. And so you actually have to talk to each other to find the right answer and click on the button to make sure that you all agree as a group and you've had a negotiation, instead of just, inside of my head, I'm worried and I'm going to rush and push this as fast as possible.
So this means if there were 3 in a group, I would have to look at my phone, my device, and then realize that, I don't have the right answer, but someone in my group might have it.
Right.
And now that person might not realize that they have the right answer. So then that would create some kind of conversation.
Right. And so ideally, you're not, if you have it on your phone, you're also not just going to click on it as quickly as possible, because you want to make sure that what's on the other people's phone are also not the best answer. Right.
Right. And I think one of the issues that I have with Kahoot, as much as I use it and as much as I love it, is that the student who knows the answer will immediately sort of, get the right answer, but then will rob the others of that thinking time, that processing time that is required to internalize some kind of concept or to review that concept if you're reviewing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to kind of look at and think about in different ways. But you have to make a choice. There are different reasons to use different quizzing platforms, for sure. But if you're trying to get some collaborative work on more straightforward and simple quiz answers, or especially things like vocabulary or whatever that is, then I think there's a lot to work with here with Quizlet Live, and great collaboration opportunities for students to kind of make sure that they're talking to each other before they make decisions.
And this is cool because this is also free, right, Brent? We love free.
Yep. So, as always, I think there are upgrade options, but you can jump right into this and give it a try.
Great. So now it is time to share our fun finds. And this time around, I'm binging on Jack Ryan 2, actually a little bit late. This is season 2. It's on Amazon Prime. And Brent, you've heard of this series?
Oh yeah, I already finished it.
Yeah. So, and I've just sort of taken a little bit at a time. It is an action-packed series, and that's all I want to say.
Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of fun, and if you like action and all that, those things, I'm with you. I like I said, I already binged it and finished through it.
So no spoilers for anybody who hasn't had time during the holidays.
No spoilers. Okay, so mine is as you know, I'm a coffee fan and a little bit of a coffee snob.
A coffee snob.
And so mine is Trade Coffee. This is, you've seen out there all the subscription links and subscription services that you can get, like people send you clothes and things. So Trade is the coffee one, right? And so they send you a box of coffee. Well, it's a bag of coffee in a box, but they send it to you from all these different roasters from all around the country, and you can tell them your flavor profiles that you like, and like, hey, I like to drink it with milk, or I like to drink it with almond milk, or I like the sweeter kinds, or I like the darker roast, or whatever you're into. So they do this whole flavor profile thing, and then they start sending them to you, and also however often you want. So if you want it weekly, or every 2 or 3 weeks, or every month, or whatever, they'll send you a bag. It's really great. I like to explore the different coffees, and so I don't just end up with the same thing over and over again all the time. And so I really highly recommend it. Trade Coffee. Oh, and Ixchell, if you are interested in this, they have a cool, like a referral program, and so I'm gonna share the referral program, because if anybody's interested in this, they would get 30% off on their first order. So 30% off.
That's
and
then
that would also be it kind of works two ways. It would also help me with give me some credit towards a free bag of coffee. Now, sorry, Ixchell, they can only send this to one person, but I will send you a cup of coffee if anybody uses this.
30% might actually get me to try becoming a coffee snob, an emergent coffee
snob.
No
joke, Ixchell. This really actually is worth testing out. Like I don't try to get on all the subscription things, but it's like, especially if you're like every 3 weeks or once a month, and it's just a different kind of coffee or a different bag from a different place, and it supports local roasters. So there's all these.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That definitely that would get me.
There's a whole like it's not just like I want money to get my free coffee. I don't really care about it that much, but like if we're sharing it out and if people want to try it, I really do recommend it. And I honestly, I use it all the time. So, anyways, what I did is I set up a link to help if anybody wants to use it. And if they want to kind of quote unquote, buy me a cup of coffee, that would be at diesel.org/trade coffee. So diesel.org/trade coffee, and then they can use that link to test it out. If you're interested, please do not feel obliged by any means, but it's
make
there.
Brent happy.
Yeah, make me happy. Get me a cup of coffee, and then, like I said, I will pay it forward to Ixchell somehow. We'll find a way to make sure that you get your own caffeine boost too.
I do love me some coffee.
So thanks so much for listening to the show. If you want to get a one-of-a-kind DIESOL pin, please show us what you've got. We would love to hear those reviews. We are looking forward to seeing everything. And again, please log in to diesel.org to see what the pin looks like, or onto our Instagram or Twitter accounts.
So to find more about this podcast episode and our previous ones, you can check us out at diesel.org.
And of course, you can find us on Twitter. I am at Brent, Brent, the letter G, and Warner.
And I'm Ixchell at IXY_PIXY. That's at Ixie_Pixie.
Oh, Ixchell, we have too many new announcements, but I should also add that we have made a Twitter account for the show. It's at DieselPod, and we also have an Instagram account for the show at the same thing, at DieselPod, and we also have a Gmail, which is dieselpod@gmail.com. So just throw that out there quickly, but we are out there and we're available that way too. So please take a look.
And in Mongolian, thank you is Bayard La. So Bayard La for tuning in to the DIESOL podcast. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.